Okay, so have you ever tried to like put together a community garden?
Ah, community gardens. Sounds peaceful.
Right? You think, oh, how hard could it be? A little bit of dirt, some seeds, sunshine, but then
Gin.
permits,
Yeah.
budgets, timelines. Suddenly you're not just dealing with zucchini, you're knee deep in project management.
You're not wrong. Even something as well-intentioned as a community garden, it can really spiral without that proper planning.
Exactly. And that is what today's deep dive is all about.
We're diving headfirst into a project management guide. Specifically, that section everyone loves, budget and resources.
Music to any organizer's ears. But before everyone tunes out thinking this is just for the spreadsheet gurus,
Right.
I gotta
Yeah.
say, these insights, I feel like they could apply to like almost any project, big or small.
Absolutely. This guide, it is written for those professionals for sure, but those principles, they apply whether you are building a skyscraper or, well, yeah, like you said, a community garden.
Love it. Okay, so let's dig into this guide. First up, estimating budget needs. Even I know, and I'm a total big picture person.
Okay.
You gotta sweat the small stuff here.
It's really tempting to jump straight to the fun stuff, picking out which tomato variety you want
Oh, yeah.
for our garden scenario. But this guide, it really emphasizes those lessons learned.
Okay.
Like, don't just budget based on your hopes and dreams, right? Gotta be realistic. I worked with a really experienced project manager a while back, and get this, they factored in potential rabbit damage into their landscaping budget.
Well, they budgeted for bunnies.
Yeah, you see, their previous community garden project, they had some unexpected furry visitors.
Wow. Okay, that is thinking ahead. See, this is why we need experts, people. So, looking back to plan forward, does the guide have like any tips on how to actually do that effectively?
It does. There's this technique it mentions called bottom-up estimating.
Okay.
It's basically you break your project down, even something like seemingly simple, right? Like building a raised bed. Right. You break it into those individual tasks. You've got to buy the wood, right? Got to transport it, assemble it. And then crucially, you actually estimate the cost for each of those little mini missions.
Interesting.
It's a surprisingly effective way to make sure you're not underestimating those costs, even for the pros.
It's like, what's it, building a house of cards. You need to make sure that every single card can actually support the weight or the whole thing, it just collapses.
Exactly. And speaking of collapses, let's talk about those unexpected gusts of wind that can topple even the sturdiest house of cards. Unforeseen challenges.
Okay.
And this is where the guide's concept of contingency reserves it comes in.
Oh, so like emergency funds, but for your project.
You got it. So imagine you have meticulously planned this amazing community garden,
Right.
and then bam, late frost hits.
Oh, no.
Now, without a contingency reserve set aside, you're suddenly scrambling, right? Trying to find the funds to replace those plants, and your whole timeline, it's at risk.
Ouch. Yeah, that is a real life budget killer right there.
Uh.
The guide also mentions these management reserves, though. Is that just a fancy way of saying you need extra authorization from, like, I don't know, the homeowners association for those surprise expenses?
Yeah, you could put it that way. It's like, when you need approval from the board to add a new water feature because, well, you didn't account for a poor soil drainage in your initial plan.
Makes sense. But even with the absolute best planning, sometimes things, they just change. What does the guide recommend for staying on top of those potential budget blowouts?
All right, this is where things get interesting. The guide brings up this thing called earned value management,
Okay.
EVM.
EVM. Okay.
Now it sounds kind of complicated,
Yeah.
but it's really just about constantly checking in on your project's progress and how that measures up against your budget.
So it's like, instead of that feeling of dread when you check your bank account after like a wild weekend,
Yeah.
EVM is like tracking your spending as you go,
Uh-huh.
so you can course correct before it's too late.
Exactly. Let's say, for example, you plan to have 30% of your garden beds built by, say, week 3,
Right.
but you are only at 20% and already spent half your budget.
Uh-oh.
EVM is going to help you catch that early, right? And make those adjustments before it impacts the entire project's success.
Okay, that is pretty brilliant, actually. But what happens if those adjustments, what if they mean changes to the project's scope or timeline? Like, do we just, plant less zucchini?
Well, the guide is actually very clear on this point. communication is absolutely key.
Right.
If you need to make changes, whether it is pushing back that planting date or, like you said, scaling back on the number of beds, you've got to keep everyone informed.
Oh, absolutely.
Your fellow gardeners, that homeowners association.
Right.
Everyone.
Transparency. Okay, and speaking of things that need to be carefully managed, let's move beyond the dollars and cents for a second.
Okay, sure.
The guide also gets into resource management. And it's not just about the money, right? It's about having the right tools, the right people for the job.
You've got it. You might have the budget to build, like, a dozen raised beds, but do you actually have enough volunteers to build them? Do you even have the right tools? And are those tools available when you need them?
This is where I imagine things can get really, really complicated. Like, it makes me think of that one time I tried to organize a family reunion.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And it was chaos. So how does the guide recommend wrangling that potential chaos?
2 words, visual aids. Okay, so visual aids, I promise it's not about making your spreadsheets prettier.
Although I do love a good spreadsheet makeover.
Don't we all? But no, this is about bringing order to that chaos, not just adding a little flair. Remember those Gantt charts?
Gantt charts.
Yeah, we briefly touched on them earlier.
Okay, yeah.
They are like the superheroes of resource management visualization.
Okay, refresh my memory. Gantt charts. Those are the ones that look like a project calendar, but like on steroids.
Exactly. Imagine this, a timeline, but you can see every single task for your community garden on it. You can see who's responsible for each of those tasks, and you can see when they overlap. That is a Gantt chart in action.
So instead of my usual method of like frantically texting volunteers like, hey, are you free this weekend? Maybe. We might need to plant things.
Right.
A Gantt chart gives me a clear picture of who's doing what and when.
Precisely. You can see if, like, your water feature installation happens to clash with, say, the compost bin building day.
Right.
Avoid a logistical nightmare before it even happens.
Okay, I am so here for this. No more panicked, like, 10 p.m. calls because I forgot that, oh, yeah, so-and-so volunteered to bring the seedlings, but they also coached their kids' soccer team on Tuesday evenings.
Exactly.
But what if, okay, this is hypothetical, obviously, but what if 2 tasks do overlap? Is the solution just to work really, really fast?
Well, that's where this idea of resource leveling comes in handy.
Resource leveling.
Yeah. So remember how we said it's not just about identifying potential conflicts. It's about, like, proactively resolving them.
Right.
So let's say you realize that your amazing volunteer carpenter who's building those beautiful raised beds, they're actually double booked on the weekend that you need to assemble the tool shed.
Uh-oh. That sounds like a recipe for some frustration.
It could be. But with resource leveling, you actually see that conflict in advance and you adjust. So maybe you ask the carpenter, hey, are you free on a weeknight instead? Or maybe there's another volunteer, with carpentry skills who could lend a hand that weekend.
Oh, okay.
The key is you have the information up front so you can make those informed decisions, keep that project moving smoothly.
Got it. So flexibility, having options, not just like rigidly sticking to the original plan no matter what.
You got it. Now, shifting gears a bit, the guide, it stresses communication a lot, like throughout the whole thing. And it's not just about, having the right tools in those plans, but it's really about keeping everyone in the loop throughout the whole process.
Because no one likes it when a surprise garden gnome just appears out of nowhere.
Well, that depends on your feelings about garden gnomes.
True.
But you're right. You're getting at something important here. Imagine, right? You've used your amazing Gantt chart, factored in your resource leveling, and then bam, wrench in the works.
Okay.
The lumber you need for those raised beds, it's suddenly on back order.
Oh, no. Our poor hypothetical garden.
Right. This is where clear, proactive communication, it is essential.
Okay.
Instead of just like hoping the problem magically solves itself, you've got to immediately inform everyone involved.
Right.
So you let your fellow gardeners know about the delay. You're transparent about how this might impact the timeline.
That makes sense. No one likes to be left in the dark, especially when they're, volunteering their time and energy.
Exactly. And this is where your leadership skills as the garden organizer, they come into play, right? Explain the situation calmly. Outline the potential solutions. Maybe there's a different type of wood you can use. Maybe you can source it locally.
Right.
Be open to that feedback from the group.
So it's like a collaborative problem-solving opportunity, not just like, the garden is ruined, meltdown.
Exactly. Remember, even with the absolute best planning, sometimes, those unexpected hurdles are going to pop up. It's how you communicate and navigate those challenges that makes the difference.
You can make or break a community garden or any project, really. This has been really eye-opening.
It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah. We've still got more to dig into, though, right, in the world of project management.
Yes, I do. Risk assessment, those all-important contingency plans.
Okay, let's do it. Risk assessment. Okay, that sounds, I don't know, kind of intimidating, like full-on disaster movie-level stuff.
Well, luckily we're not writing the screenplay for Community Garden Chaos today. But you're right, risk assessment, it does involve thinking about what could go wrong.
So less Hollywood disaster, more like, what, strategic foresight?
Exactly. Being proactive, not paranoid.
Right.
Like the guide, it suggests, really sitting down and brainstorming those potential obstacles that are like specific to your particular project. So for our community garden example, what happens if we have like a sudden heat wave right after we plant everything?
Oh, ouch. Or like, what if that one volunteer, the one with like the only key to the shed,
Oh, no.
goes on vacation during a crucial week?
Yeah, these are good real life scenarios that could totally derail a project.
Totally.
And this is where those contingency plans that we keep mentioning, that's where they come in.
Okay, so risk assessment without a contingency plan is like, what, having a fire alarm but no fire extinguisher?
100%. You've identified the danger, but what are you actually going to do about it?
Okay, I'm with you. So let's break this down. We've identified our potential risks. Heat wave, the missing volunteer. What's next?
So the what if becomes the then what.
Okay.
So say if that heat wave hits, our contingency plan might be, okay, we're investing in some shade cloths, or we're setting up a temporary irrigation system.
Right.
If our key holding volunteer is MIA, maybe we need to like arrange for a backup person or, I don't know, explore a lockbox situation.
Okay, so having those backup plans ready to go so you're not scrambling at the last minute.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, like, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Although, hopefully our community garden isn't facing anything too disastrous.
Right. Let's hope not. It's all about, staying adaptable, ready to like adjust on the fly.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to a really, really important takeaway from this guide. Even with the most incredibly detailed plan,
Yeah.
you still need that dose of flexibility.
Of course, of course.
And of course, open communication.
Because life and the weather, and let's be honest, sometimes even rogue garden gnomes,
The garden gnome.
they throw curveballs.
They really do. And that's where having those strong communication channels in place,
Yeah.
that's essential. If you have to deviate from the plan, even a little bit, loop everyone in. Explain what's going on, be transparent about any of those changes you're making, and be open to that feedback.
Right, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Collaboration,
Yeah.
making sure everyone feels heard.
100%. A successful project, whether we're talking about a community garden or a website launch, or even just like planning a family vacation,
Right?
it all relies on that balance, right? That
Yeah.
planning and adapting, the structure and the flexibility.
So good. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, this
Yeah.
fascinating and, dare I say, kind of fun world of project management,
I know, right? Who knew?
what's like the one big takeaway you hope our listeners, they walk away with?
I think for me, it's that, a little planning goes a really long way. Don't let the fear of getting, bogged down in details
Right.
keep you from experiencing the joy of a well-executed project. And remember, it's not just about managing those budgets and timelines.
It's
It's about managing those expectations.
Oh, I like that.
Yours and everyone else you're collaborating with.
Beautifully said. On that note, we will leave you with this thought. Embrace the unexpected. Communicate openly. And never, ever underestimate the power of a well-placed contingency plan.
You're here.
Until next time, happy planning, everyone.